try to get people seated so we can be aware of everybody's time. I know the evening is a tough time for people to be able to make a meeting, so I appreciate you taking the time to come out today. If you don't get a chance to sign in now, the sign-in sheet will be open at the end. Just make sure that you do sign in. For those of you that are joining us online today, can you please enter your name and affiliation or town in the chat so we can keep a record of who's here today? Because sometimes the information when you register isn't going to actually translate to exactly how you want to be represented. I saw a lot of seats when I walked in the door today, and I thought, wow, it'd be great if we could fill these. And it's amazing that we had to go and get so many more. That's really fantastic. My name is Brian Roberts. I'm the Associate Director of Science at Louisiana University Marine Consortium, or LUMCON. My contact information is on the slide. I'm the lead of the Atchafalaya Basin Potential Louisiana Near Site Team. My co-leads, I did this to actually respond again, are Justin, who's standing right here, and Jimmy Nelson from Louisiana Lafayette, who is online. So, like I said, if you're just joining us, please enter your name and affiliation in the chat online, or if you're here in person and you don't get a chance to do it now, please go to the sign-in table before you leave today. There are also a series of handouts that are present on the seats, and we have some extras at the sign-in table. There are handouts about the LA NEAR process itself, about the Atchafalaya Basin proposal. There's also a survey that we're going to ask you to fill out. And if you need any of these materials, they're also being posted in the chat, so you'll be able to access them if you're connecting with us online. Okay, so today we're going to go through, first we're going to have two presentations that are going to be videos that have been recorded ahead of time. One by Kristen Ransom, the Regional Coastal Management Specialist of NOAA Office of Coastal Management. And the second one is by Dr. Robert Twilley, who's at LSU, and he's the overall lead of the LA NEAR Designation Leadership Team. Oh, and if you can please hold your questions until we get to the end of the question period. We're going to move the microphone out here so that way the people online can hear your questions and comments, and I'll be trying to repeat things so that way everybody can hear them under both platforms. Look under the microphone to get this started.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, even if it is virtual. My name is Kristen Ransom, and I'm with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Office for Coastal Management. I'm based in the Gulf of Mexico, here in Louisiana, and I am NOAA's point of contact to the team working to designate a National Estuarine Reserve Site you can reshare your screen and you'll see a little checkbox that you have to check that says that you want to also share the audio.
Oh, there it is. Got it. Thank you. All right, let's try to do it.
I'll give you a thumbs up if we can hear it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, even if it is virtual. My name is Kristen Ransom, and I'm with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Office for Coastal Management. I'm based in the Gulf of Mexico, here in Louisiana, and I am NOAA's point of contact to the team working to designate a National Estuarine Research Reserve site in Louisiana. The Office for Coastal Management is NOAA's office responsible for the implementation of the National Estuarine Research Reserve System, or NERS, and I'm excited to provide you with a short overview of the system and some of the benefits that having a reserve site in Louisiana could bring. But first, I'd like to talk a little bit about why estuaries matter. They are incredibly diverse habitats. Inside the reserve system, we have sand flats, we've got mud flats, we've got oyster reefs and seagrasses. We've got all kinds of different habitats that are just really diverse and incredibly cool. We also provide, our estuaries also provide healthy ecosystems. Most of our marine organisms, including 2/3 of the nation's commercial fish and shellfish, spend some part of their life cycle inside an estuary, or they rely on it for food. They also provide community benefits. They protect upland areas from flooding and storm surge. They improve water quality, and they're just some of the most awesome places to fish and boat, or just enjoy being in nature. They also provide a lot of economic benefits. Coastal shoreline parishes in Louisiana provided 111,500 jobs in 2018 and contributed almost $14.1 billion, that's with a B, dollars to the nation's gross domestic product in 2018. So the National Estuarine Research Reserve System is established by the Coastal Zone Management Act, specifically Section 315, and it's a network of 30 protected places that represent different biogeographic areas within the United States. Taking a look at the map here, you can see that almost all of the United States Great Lakes coastal states and territories have a reserve. You will see, if you look at the Gulf of Mexico, there's one state missing, and we are here to fix that. The first reserve was designated in 1974, that's in South Slough, Oregon, and the most recent was designated last week on Friday, and that is our newest reserve in Connecticut. So we're really excited to have them come on board. The smallest reserve by size is 573 acres at Old Woman Creek in Ohio, and the largest is 366,000 acres, and that's in Ketchimak Bay, Alaska. So you'll see that each reserve brings unique characteristics as well as opportunities to learn from one another. And this reserve system truly operates as a system and not just a collection of individual sites. So the reserve system currently protects over 1.3 million acres across the country, and it serves as a platform to increase research, education, and resource stewardship in an integrated way to address habitat protection, water quality, and climate change. We have a long-term vision for the reserve system, and that the United States will have resilient estuaries and coastal watersheds where human and natural communities thrive. The mission of our system is to practice and promote stewardship of coasts and estuaries through innovative research, education, and training using a place-based system of protected areas. And that place-based aspect is very important. So in other words, our reserves serve as living laboratories for the study of estuaries and the natural and man-made changes that occur within them. They help connect science to people, and whether they are teachers, students, decision makers, or coastal residents, everyone can find something they need at a reserve. And they also serve as demonstration sites where new ideas can be tested and modeled. We like to also say that our reserve system is locally relevant and nationally significant. So this means that the power of the reserve system is that the network uses the same approach at each site that allows for comparison among those sites and building information that can be used at a regional and national scale. However, the information that is developed is applied to address specific local issues of concern for the people and habitats within the reserve And so in this partnership, the state is responsible for owning and managing the land and facilities that the reserve uses. And we do this through relying on existing state protections. NOAA relies heavily on these protections. And one of the things I would like to emphasize very, very clearly is that when a new reserve is designated, there will be no new regulations placed on existing uses in those areas. We rely on a memorandum of agreement between the state and NOAA that outlines what the existing state authorities are and rely on those to manage the reserve. So, to clarify, if you have a specific place that you love to fish and it's included as part of the reserve, you'll still be able to fish there. Nothing's going to change. If you have a particular area that you like to hunt and it's included in the reserve, you'll still be able to hunt there. Nothing's going to change. Because you really want to be very clear that no new regulations are placed on existing uses when a reserve is designated. The state also provides program staff for implementing stewardship, education, research, and training programs, and provides 30% match to the operations funding. For NOAA's part, we provide national policy and program guidance, system-wide coordination, and oversight. We provide technical assistance, and each reserve site has a dedicated point of contact in a NOAA office that is there to answer questions and connect them to resources. Finally, NOAA provides 70% of the operations funding. One other thing I'd like to point out is that the management of a reserve and the human uses within it is an ongoing endeavor. It's not static once a reserve is designated. This is accomplished through the development of a management plan, and that management plan is revised on a regular basis. Reserves also have an advisory board that is made up of members of the community in and around the reserve boundary and watershed, and allows for the community to provide input and say into the management of the reserve. So, would like to let you know that you will have a voice in how this reserve is managed once it's designated. So I'd like to get into some specifics on some of the programs that happen at reserve sites, and these are some of the things that you would be able to expect to see if a reserve site is designated in your area. First, we talk a little bit about science to management. Our reserve staff work with local communities and regional groups to address natural resource management issues like water quality and habitat restoration. But they do this in a way where they partner with groups in and around the site to ensure that the research and education is taking place can and will be used to address those place-based issues of concern. One fantastic example I'll share is our reserve site to the west, that's Mission Aransas Reserve in Texas, works with a multitude of partners in the region to conduct science and make management recommendations that help support and promote the health of the habitat that is used by the only natural flock of endangered whooping cranes in the United States. And I will say that that reserve sees a ton of people coming to that site every winter to get a look at these birds. So next, talk a little bit about our system-wide monitoring program. In an effort to understand and track long-term changes in estuaries and coastal areas, the reserves developed the system-wide monitoring program in 1995. And it's unique because it allows us to track long-term changes in coastal areas and make conclusions about trends nationwide. Because every site is collecting this data in the exact same way, using the exact same methodology, and the exact same quality assurance and quality control protocols. I'll give you a fun little example here. Currently, as of almost 11 o'clock on January 19th, over in Weeks Bay Reserve in Alabama, the maximum wind speed is about 0 miles an hour and it's almost 50 degrees. So if you were wanting to take a boat out in, say, Mobile Bay, you would have a good sense of what the conditions are and help you plan. And people use information like that very, very often. This info is updated in real time and it's very, very useful. Next, we have our education programs. So our reserve sites serve as a living classroom The first is our coastal training program. This is a program that provides training and technical assistance on relevant coastal management issues to local coastal decision makers. That's the focus here. And so the point is to provide the best available science to support decision making. We also have our K-12 estuarine education program, or KEEP, which helps educators bring estuarine science into their classrooms through hands-on learning, experiments, fieldwork, and data explorations. The goal of the KEEP program is to increase estuary literacy among students, teachers, and the public. We also have our Davidson Graduate Research Fellowship. This provides funding to place a graduate student at a reserve for 2 years to conduct a project that addresses a key management question at the reserve site. Some of the Davidson projects include understanding the effects of salinity ranges on the Apalachicola Bay food web, that's over at Apalachicola Bay Reserve in Florida, and evaluating the effectiveness of restoration practices for nearshore habitat. That's going on over in Grand Bay. And then finally, we have our Science Collaborative. This is a program that funds user-driven collaborative research and science transfer activities to essentially make sure that the science and research that happens is done with the input of the folks that will be directly impacted by that management decision. The collaborative is currently administered through the University of Michigan. All right, so let's talk about money. So I want to go through a little bit of what we're talking about when we say operations funding. What sort of levels are we looking at here? So what you've got here is the past 3 fiscal years of funding appropriated to the Office for Coastal Management for the operation of reserves. Again, this is allocated by Congress annually. And you'll see last year, in fiscal year 2021, the reserves received $28.5 million for the operations, research, and facilities funding. This is the pot of money that goes to manage the day-to-day activities of the reserve, and this pot of money is split evenly among all 30 sites in the reserve system. We also have our Procurement, Acquisition, and Construction Fund. This was allocated at about $4.5 million last year. And this funding is competitively awarded, and it provides funding for things like land acquisition to add areas into the reserve boundary, or to construct new or improve facilities. This funding is, again, competitively awarded, and it's a 50-50 match for land acquisition programs and a 70-30 match for facilities construction. So going through the designation process, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the steps and where we're at. So first, the first step of a designation is for the state to send a letter to NOAA identifying its interest in developing a reserve program and nominating a site. NOAA received a letter of interest from Governor Edwards in July of 2019, and the NOAA administrator affirmed its support for the designation process to start in November of 2019. The next step is site selection and nomination, and that's where we're at now. The state develops a process for selecting a site in consultation with NOAA and key partners and getting public input on the site. The governor will then submit that site proposal to NOAA, and NOAA will either accept or reject the nomination for the site. Once NOAA has accepted the nomination for the site, then we move into draft environmental impact statement and management plan development. During this process, NOAA and the state will work hand in hand to develop these 2 documents, and there will be many, many opportunities to receive and hear public comment on the management
hear from Dr. Twilley about the Louisiana process.
Hi, I'm Robert Twilley.
I think we want to hear more from Dr. Twilley.
Hi, I'm Robert Twilley. I'm a professor here in the Department of Oceanography and Public Sciences at LSU, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you to a town hall meeting to help us develop a National Estuarine Research Reserve here in coastal Louisiana. I want to give my thanks to Kristen for introducing to you the process of the NER, what is a NER, explaining it from the federal and from NOAA's perspective. What I want to do in the next couple of minutes is to describe to you the process that we've been using to get to where we are tonight, and also to show you how important it is at this point in this process that you become engaged. It's so that you are part of this NER process. And I really, again, want to thank you for attending, and I really hope this is just helping us build a NER here in Louisiana. Just to reiterate again real quick, this is a chance for us in Louisiana to become connected to a national system, to tell our story at a national level. And it's so important because we are a unique environment. The Mississippi River Delta is very different than the coastal landscape. So it's just a great chance for us to tell the nation about that. But it's also a great chance for us here in the state to find a place to build facilities with the cooperation and collaboration of NOAA to meet the missions that Kristen has talked about. And the ones that we're really excited about, again, is the outreach, the mission for students, the education opportunities, the training opportunities, the stewardship opportunities, finding a place that we can do that here in coastal Louisiana so that we can tell our story to the public, to our students, to ourselves, but also a place where we can tell that story at the national level. It's a place for us to, again, to engage, to see the coast and actually see what the issues are, what the problems are, but also what the opportunities and what the solutions. And then again, telling that not only to each other, but to the nation. So I really hope someday to see you in one of these pictures when we film in here in coastal Louisiana. And also for our students, it's a place for them to come out and learn about the wonders of our coast, and get these expressions on their face when they actually experience the coast. So we look forward to seeing our students on field trips, visiting our NER site very, very soon. And so, again, this is the start of a very intense effort to get the public engaged in helping us develop the proposed sites and move us forward in developing a NER here in coastal Louisiana. And we have a website that we spent quite a bit of time developing so that it provides you the information, it provides you that window or door to walk into the NER process and sign up and participate and keep up with what we're doing relative to advancing this in the future. Hosted by Louisiana Sea Grant. You can go to Sea Grant, www.lacgrant.org. Right next to the logo of Sea Grant on the front page is the NER button. Press that, get you to this opening page. In the lower right that I've highlighted is a page that opens up, and it gives you step-by-step the progress that we make and any updates and any meetings that are held relative to our process of developing a NER. Where are we in that process? Well, we're following guidelines from NOAA with the letter, of course, from the Governor Edwards accepted to start and initiate the process was accepted by NOAA. So we've been working just about 18 months now and getting to the stages where we have proposals that we're looking at and evaluating. And that is very important. That is the process where we are right now with another 18-month process, are going through what we call the designation process. So this is just the beginning. You are now, this is so that you have a chance to help us shape this, both during the final steps of the nomination process, but also help us shape it during the designation process. And we've been very fortunate. We've had over 70 people on the technical analysis of various evaluations of different criteria, looking at the screening of the proposals, and also, which you will hear more about tonight, is a proposal team in your specific area that's working on a proposal or an alternative site for a pier. Well, what are we using as our criteria? Well, NOAA has provided guidelines, and we are given the opportunity by NOAA within these broad guidelines to establish what's unique to our region, particularly what's unique to the Mississippi River Delta. And so when you hear us talk about criteria, or you hear us talk about meeting the mission, what is the various attributes that NOAA has found that builds a very successful and effective year, that's what we're responding to, is those attributes that have been described to us by NOAA through these criteria. What are some of those? Well, uniqueness of our environment. And of course, the seventh largest river in the world produces a unique environment called coastal Louisiana. So the Mississippi River Delta, I think we have that one pretty well covered among all the three remote sites. State land and waters that contribute to research, education, and stewardship. This is a federal-state partnership. The state has to demonstrate it has management qualifications on the land and the waters that are constitute the boundaries of the near site. And so that was a very important part of our process, is looking at coastal basins where we have state land and waters available. And the third is the integrity of the site. Will the site be there 50 years from now? I mean, in most coastal landscapes, this is not an issue. But for us here in Louisiana, we have to be very cautious about where we're going to make investments and what is the long-term sustainability of the site. So we looked at that. And these are the three screening criteria we just focused on. There's a list of other criteria that we will talk more about through your proposal teams. But you know, it is finding a place pretty basically that meets the mission, that gives us the opportunity, as I showed you earlier, of getting the public engaged, doing the stewardship, the training, getting our students engaged, and the education and outreach, and also an opportunity for our research, continued research efforts in the state. All of these are so important also where we find the state. So where do we end up at this stage right now? We have three proposed sites: the Atchafalaya Basin, Barataria Basin, the Pontchartrain Basin. You're attending a town hall meeting that's to describe to you what are these three sites. All three sites, as you can see in dark red, have a lot of opportunities with state land and with blue state waters. We are just now looking at what combination of these may be most suitable, again, to meet the mission of a year as defined by NOAA. Your input in helping identify that is so important. That's why we initiated this program called Town Hall Meetings to get you engaged. And again, these are all environments that have quite a bit of unique environmental settings. The reason why that's such a high priority by NOAA is when we take students out, right, on a field trip and get them out to see the coast, what environments are available for them to really learn what it is in Delta, what's so unique about coastal Louisiana. When we have visitors come in, where is that site? When we have the public going out and engaged, what is the site that helps us tell that story? So here you are at a town hall meeting. Again, I want to thank you for attending. We had 9 of these set up. We will have a survey that we would like you to participate. But again, we have plenty of other opportunities on our website for you to stay engaged as well. One of the reasons operations of the year. And so there are no more, those major rules. We are looking for sites with existing rules and policies that we've all accepted here in Louisiana. And we're asking no one to accept those rules and regulations on the management of those lands and waters that constitute the criteria to become a National Estuarine Research Reserve. And so it is very important, again, that we look at that closely in the site nomination process. We don't get down into those weeds or into the details. We're looking more broadly at this stage as to, of these three alternative sites, which have the best opportunity presently to move us forward to these positions. When the designation process is identified takes 18 months, you dig into the details of the memorandum of understanding, you sign the formal contracts, you sign the formal agreement, and then that's when we want to make sure we really preserve, what is the existing regulations and policies for the land that we are designated as a National Estuarine Research Reserve. That's also a time of great opportunity of adding additional land and promoting the near with the public engagement to even building it larger in the future. We have an executive committee that's represented by DNR, the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, and the Governor's Office of Coastal Activities. There will be the executive committee involved in the final decisions of which site will actually be nominated. We are hoping that we will have that process in May 2022. And then we have a site nominated by Governor Edwards to NOLA by the end of June of this year. And again, once a site has been accepted that we've nominated to NOLA to proceed as developing a near, that is what will begin the designation process. And again, that's another year that your engagement is so important relative to getting into the details of exactly what a near will be. Thank you again for attending this town hall meeting. And if you have any questions, contact us through our website, again, here, hosted by Sea Grant. As you see the email, deltanear@lsu.edu. You can find me at LSU. You can send me a note as well. And please stay engaged. And again, thank you very much for attending. Good night.
I want to thank both Kristen and Robert for providing their remarks. And for the rest of the day, I want to spend time talking about the Atchafalaya Basin as a potential LA site. I mentioned before, my name is Brian Roberts. I'm the Associate Director of Science at Lumpton. My email address is here. You see that several times throughout today's presentation. My co-leads are Justin in the audience and Jimmy Nelson, who's at University of Louisiana Lafayette, who is online today. So I start with this image for an important reason. Screen forward. Okay. Is the Atchafalaya Basin is right here in the middle of our image. And it's often thought to be very remote. Okay, but if you look within that basin, I mean, you can see we're sitting here today in Morgan City. We go up to New Iberia, where we're going to be on Thursday night. So anybody that you know who hasn't learned about this or want to learn more, we're going to have another one of these town halls on Thursday. So please promote it to your friends, have them go check us out there. I should mention also that on the website, these presentations are also there on the Deltaneer website hosted by Sea Grant, so you can always find out more information about that. But if you move higher up in the basin, you see we're bordered by the cities of Lafayette and Baton Rouge. And if you look at what is the population of people within a 100-mile radius of this basin, it's about 3.3 million, which is on par with the population within a 100-mile radius of one of the closest near to our east, Grand Bay in Mississippi, is about 3.3 million as well. You go to the nearest one to our west, in Aransas in Texas, that's actually about 4 times smaller of a population within a 100-mile radius. If you go and try to think about how easy is it for people to go there on a field trip, for a school trip, for example, you might think about maybe 75 miles. The way most of us drive around here, that's probably an hour, it's speed limit says, but that's about 2.2 million. So there's a lot of people within there. And within that 75-mile radius, there are 860 schools, which is over 456,000 students. Also, when you talk about access, well, it's a real remote place. How do people get access to get on the river or get in these environments? There are about 150 boat launches that are found throughout this basin. There's a lot of points of access. I think that's important to keep in mind. Okay, so one of the things I want to do is it's not just Justin, Junie, and I putting together this proposal and thinking about, what would make a great near site and why it should be in Atchafalaya Basin. And we were trying to put together what our team was. We wanted to try to get people that had different backgrounds and perspectives and how this might be an important location to have a near and its contribution to the national system. So we have people from the Nature Conservancy, from a variety of universities, Louisiana Lafayette, Lumcon, LSU, Nichols State University. We have people that work in education outreach, in communication coordination, working with youth wetland and outreach programs. We have Audubon, Louisiana, actually now Audubon Delta, update that. The U.S. Geologic Survey, Restore the Mississippi River Coalition, and Restore Retreat. We have a diverse group of people that are trying to contribute on an everyday basis. But we're here to have these meetings to start welcoming more of your feedback, getting more of the public input in terms of what it is we should be doing in our selection process. So both Kristen and Robert gave you an overview of some of that national policy and the approach to what a NEAR is about. And I want to highlight just one of those criteria that's at a national level for the system. The site's contribution to the biogeographical and typological balance of the National Estuarine Research Reserve system. Okay. Get this down to words that we all understand. You're trying to find something that's a unique contribution that contributes to the overall system, not just being something that's a copy of what we have at different places throughout the country. What is it unique that this system, a new NEAR site, can add to that national network? So NOAA will give priority consideration for proposals to establish reserves in biogeographic regions or subregions or incorporating types that are not represented in the system. So what is it unique about Louisiana that we can offer? And if you actually go to Governor Edwards' letter to NOAA requesting that we be considered to have a site in the network, Louisiana would like to nominate a site in the Delta biogeographic region for inclusion in the NEARS. We're defined to many people around the world by our river delta and how that influences the way we live our lives, right? So how do we best design a delta NEAR site? So what are the components of a NEAR, like of a delta for a NEAR? So a delta NEAR, figure out how to get legal. Okay, so you have the river and its alluvial floodplain. So you have all the water that goes over and carries over to the wetlands around it. You have the river delta itself, and you have the estuarine ecosystem down at the bottom, right? So we can conceptualize that and think about it from the perspective of the basin as a whole. Okay, and so I have this map here for two reasons. One is talking about some of the major watersheds that exist throughout Louisiana and highlighting the Atchafalaya Vermilion over on the left. So the white line is where land was in the 1930s. The green line is the area where we have land in 2010. So while we do have areas in the Atchafalaya Basin where we have loss, we're losing land here like we are in lots of other areas of the state, We also have areas that have immense growth because we have a fluorinated yellow. We have active land building taking place in here, which, thinking about it from a perspective of being able to look at things in the long term, that climatic changes over time, it makes the Atchafalaya Basin an ideal place to look for a near site. Put this back down at the bottom. All right. So when we were trying to start thinking about how to conceptualize what a near site would be for the Atchafalaya Basin, our overall vision for an approach development of the Atchafalaya near is to include all the key habitats or ecosystems looked at in the near selection process, with the idea being the Atchafalaya Basin provides a unique river delta that encompasses all the key relevant habitats found in Louisiana. Essentially, the basin is a mini Louisiana. Okay, it's essentially a small-scale version of Louisiana representing all the habitats found in the state, and is a model for how the state and other deltaic systems form. And if you break up the basin, you can think about it up here in blue at the top. That's where we have our alluvial floodplain zone. As you move down here where we are and down below, you're moving into the river delta and the fresh marsh zone. And as you move away from the rivers, the river delta, as you're moving into brackish and salt marshes. So what do each of these look like? Okay, so if you go in the alluvial floodplain, the upper part of the basin is bottomland hardwood forest. The high sites, the higher elevation areas that have low flooding are dominated by American sweet gum, water oak, sugarberry. The low-lying sites with high flooding, overcup oak, water hickory, green ash. As you move down the system further, you move into the cypress tupelo swamp, which many people think about for Louisiana, right? And then, move this yet again. We also have shrub communities in some areas. We have water elm, swamp privet, button bush, scattered cypress present in there. As we move further downstream and we move into the river delta and the fresh marsh, you go to the delta islands, right? You go to the upstream tips of those islands. You have black willow with understory of elephant ear, rice cutgrass, climbing hempweed. As the elevation decreases and you move closer to the sea, you have tidal fresh marsh vegetation dominating, as you're seeing in some of these lower pictures. And then that zone also contains extensive submerged aquatic vegetation, low intertidal and subtidal areas. And then you move into the brackish and salt marsh zones. As you move away from those river deltas, I've depicted it largely over to our west, but also as you move into Four Leaf Bay and that area over to the east. The estuaries are fringed with brackish and salt marshes, and to a lesser extent, we have black mangrove patches that are present. So it's not just the vegetation and the habitats, right? It's the animals that are present in here in this basin. The basin has critical habitats for Louisiana black bear, neotropical migratory birds, American alligators, fish, and a lot of invertebrates, many of which we like to eat. The Audubon has declared it critical bird habitat for many species. We also have more than a dozen threatened or endangered species, including piping plover and other birds of concern, West Indian manatee, pallid sturgeon, and at least 5 species of sea turtles that are found within our basin. This is an incredibly rich and diverse habitat within the basin for both the vegetation as well as the fauna that are present. I think one of the important things here is that any proposed Atchafalaya near site would only require state lands. So what this map is depicting, everything in green are state-owned lands. Everything that's in yellow are federally owned lands. And then we highlight one because it's one of our partners over here to the west. The Paul Rainey Wildlife Sanctuary is owned by Audubon, but there's a lot of lands owned by PNC and a lot of other organizations. That's the Nature Conservancy. Sorry, getting that academic acronym language. But one thing that's really interesting about this is that we have extensive state lands within each of the regions I've just discussed. So we have extensive state lands within the alluvial floodplain, both the northern part where you have those bottomland forests, and the southern part where you move into the cypress tupelo swamps. In the river delta, we have one of the most extensive areas of river delta that's actually owned by the state. And then in your brackish and salt marshes, we have very extensive state lands. And then we have all of those connecting state-owned water rights. And that's what I said here. It's amazing how sometimes the slides got a step ahead of me and I don't remember that I have that there. In total, we have about 65% of the basin is actually owned by the state. So you don't have to go and try to find new lands that come up with a near site or in the Atchafalaya Basin. The other thing is that, it's not like all of these state lands are going to be part of the basin. As Kristen pointed out at the beginning, it's like, yeah, there's $30 million roughly over 30 reserves. It's really hard to manage and sample and document what's going on if you had all the state lands included. But we have the ability, these are all potential sites, and that's part of where your contributions to this conversation are. Trying to figure out where are the most strategic places for us to try to focus on in developing what a near site might be. That would have the most benefits to the most people and be able to still be able to characterize what it means to be part of the Louisiana deltaic system. And of course, the long-term goal, and Dr. Twilley alluded to this too, is that where the site starts is not necessarily where it ends. Many of the near sites have grown in size over time. They changed some of where their priorities and foci are in terms of what it is that their near site is trying to accomplish because of changes that happen within in those respective basins. So our long-term goal is to work with our federal, so there's a lot of federal lands that are here and other organizations, things like Nature Conservancy and Audubon and private landowners to expand the near into the future. But this is all part of that process after the site is selected. Right now, we're basically trying to propose what a potential site is and highlight where the strengths are. So, I mentioned this point already. I'm using how my slides actually give me my points, and I just follow those as opposed to talking as I go. Of the 1.6 million acres designated to be part of the Atchafalaya Estuarine Zone, there are about 750,000 acres of state-owned lands and about 300,000 acres of state-owned water bodies. That accounts for more than 65% of the total area. And there are greater than 10 state or federally designated wildlife areas within this basin. Okay, so this was touched on in the previous two presentations, but I want to kind of talk about it just a little bit here. I want to reserve most of the time to hear feedback and have discussions with those of you in attendance here in Oregon City and those of you online. So Dr. Twilley alluded to this in terms of some of the key components of what a reserve is about. So they're established for long-term stewardship, research, education, and training. Okay, in terms of stewardship, Provost Atchafalaya Reserve would use current monitoring efforts and restoration activities to increase physical and biological monitoring in the fresh, floating, brackish, and salt marshes as you move down through the basin. In terms of research, the proposed Atchafalaya Reserve would provide vital research opportunities and access. It would be the only active delta in the estuary system in the NER network, adding value to the significance of the research conducted at the site. In terms of education, the Atchafalaya Basin is perfectly situated to offer a variety of opportunities for learning. It's centrally located along the coast. I already talked to you about how many people and school-age children are within a reasonable trip of the basin. Provides relatively short travel distances from major coastal cities and universities. And in terms of training, this region is an ideal place to discuss the interconnectedness of engineering, ecology, and its impacts on communities. So part of what we're doing is to try to establish partners in terms of what might be an effective near site. And so what we've been doing to this point is we've actually built a growing number of partnerships as we're trying to develop what this near site is. So Justin from the Atchafalaya National Heritage Area. We've given presentations to and had discussions with the Atchafalaya River Basin Restoration Enhancement Task Force. Louisiana Sea Grants, obviously very much involved. The Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, most of the state lands that are mentioned within any of these three basins are actually operated by LDWF, and so they're going to obviously be a key partner. And then on our team, we have a variety of these different groups that are present, and then we have St. Mary Excel, who's well represented here today, and many of you know, have been very helpful in this process of moving forward. So really the question is, how can you help to contribute to the LA selection process? Because all the things I want you to see are at the bottom, I'm going to move this back up to the top. Okay, so you can reach out to our team. You know, Justin, you can reach out to him. I'm trying to put my email out here as many times as I can, so you can feel free to reach out to me. You can also find us through the overall LA NEAR website at Seagrant. And so on your two-page handouts, they have contact information for the NEAR. The one that's about the NEAR process has all of these things on it. Actually, this is copied and pasted right here from that. So, you know, the website's on here, finding on Facebook, Twitter, there's a listserv, and of course you can send emails directly to deltanear@lsu.edu. Okay, there's also a frequently asked questions, and I know Dr. Twilley went through a few of them, but there's really, you can't go through some of these enough to just sort of make sure that you understand what it is we're talking about here. Anytime you get the federal government coming in with something, you know, there's concerns about what is that going to mean and how I use these different locations, okay? So Kristen talked a lot about this in her part, and so did Dr. Twilley. You know, what programs and benefits the research reserves offer. They apply science and education to improve management of estuaries. Each of the reserves is somewhat unique. It brings together local stakeholders, scientists, land management professionals, educators to understand coastal management issues and generate local integrated solutions. Will the state have to purchase land for the Louisiana Reserve? No. We're only considering existing publicly owned lands and adjacent public trust waters. Will a new reserve involve NOAA taking land from the state? NOAA does not own or manage land within a reserve, nor does the designation of reserve add new state or federal regulations. All of this is, as Dr. Twilley and Kristen both described, this is NOAA and the federal government are providing an infrastructure for how all these NEAR sites can run, but in terms of the day-to-day operations, it's all done by the state. And again, I'm answering no questions. Will the federal government run the reserve? The Louisiana NEAR will be a partnership between NOAA and the state of Louisiana. The state is responsible for day-to-day management. So, and the state is responsible for 30% of the funding for reserve operations. And the most important one to most people is that, does the designation of reserve bring more rules and regulation? No, it does not add any new regulations to state-owned lands. Recreational hunting and fishing, which is obviously very important, near and dear to most of us that live in this area, as well as commercial and fishing allowed in near sites. The designation of reserve does not preclude existing uses, does not result in the total preservation of the area. And a lot of these things are going to be through conversations with all of you as we're developing the management plan for once a site is selected. Okay, so there are more frequently asked questions and responses found on the website. In this document, which you should also have a handout of as well. And so really trying to get through this as quickly as possible, giving you a quick overview of sort of how we're viewing this and what we think the Atchafalaya Basin has to offer. And really, the rest of this time, we really want to devote to seeing what questions you have. So I'll open up the audience. Do you want to, how do we want to do this? Do you want to move the mic around, or do you want to have a stand?
I think I'm just going to put the mic here in the middle of the room. If anybody has a quiet voice and can't boom loud enough, you're welcome to come up in here and stand at this mic. Brian is actually going to repeat everything for the folks at home on Zoom.
Thank you. My name is David Hannengrip. I'm St. Mary Parish resident. And I want to thank Noah, UNCOM, the governor's office, and everyone else that's involved in making this important process on selecting a site in Louisiana. What's funny is that I attended many Zoom meetings, okay, early on. And what's funny is at the end of each of the meetings, the criteria that was set on locating a site and the statements you made tonight, I kept saying, well, you're looking for a site, you're here. St. Mary Parish, Morgan City. What better place to have this location? We're centrally located. You have the basin, you have the Gulf, the proximity you stated around the individuals, the universities. You have Lafayette, Baton Rouge, Nichols. Where are we? Right in the center. So location is huge and it's important. And we're right here in St. Mary Parish, center of everything, epicenter. You talk about investments, it's already St. Mary Parish, the bear habitat. Well, St. Mary Parish is the epicenter of the bear habitat. We're here. The Tesh Project, kayak trails along the Bayou Tesh, the involvement there, the National Wildlife Rescue. A few weeks ago, I attended with the friends of the National Wildlife Rescue right here in St. Mary Parish, where Shell Pipeline, with a pilot program, they're planting flowers on the pipeline. So everything starts here. St. Mary Parish is critical with this happening right here at St. Mary Parish, no matter what. You talk about, infrastructure, traveling. You want students to come. Well, here in St. Mary Parish, a few miles north, the basin, a few miles south is the Gulf. What better location where you can actually put people and students and get them right in the middle of it within minutes, rather than other locations where it might take an hour boat ride to get where you need to be. St. Mary Parish is where you need to be. You're going to have the full support of the community, as you can see right now with everyone here. You can have full support of St. Mary Parish government and everyone else here, because it's all about local investment, the people who want it. St. Mary Parish, we're here, we're hard workers, we're fishermen, we're shrimpers, we're oil field workers, we're all here. We want it. St. Mary Parish needs it. Thank you.
So if you're online, please enter questions in the chat, so that way we can make sure that we get to hear your questions as well. Can I just ask the question of Sandy or Robert? Can you guys hear the questions from the microphone online? Okay. All right, great. That was a lot to have to repeat. I'm sure we're going to cancel all Basically, I think the sentiment was that the near should be here in St. Mary Parish. I think that's pretty much what was being said. Okay. It makes it a lot easier if I don't have to fully repeat all of these. All right. Thank you.
I think that's why we're all here.
Yes.
Can't hear.
Let me take the mic. Oh, hold on 1 second, Robert. Let me move the. Let's take the. Let's see. Let's go again. I got the microphone by the screen.
I just wanted to say that response to that question or comment, that's exactly the nature of these town hall meetings, because that's what's missing is the developing documents to define what a near is exactly what you, the public, and the officials that are there, your community, you know what your assets are, you know why, a near is so important to you, and we just need to make sure that gets captured in each of the totals, and so that you can make sure Brian gets that statement, it's a great contribution to what we're trying to develop. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Robert. I will say, so one of the things that we are, looking for is to be able to show what the public support for a near is in each of these basins. We're all looking for that. So there are some templates that are floating around here for what a potential letter of support might look like. If you have questions or want to talk more about that, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk with you about it. At this point, we're not looking for commitments of resources or things like that. What we're looking for is examples of, that you would like to see one here, that you're willing to discuss things in the future. Down the road, after a site gets selected, is when we're actually going to be trying to figure out what memorandums of understanding are in terms of what commitments are being made. But right now, we're trying to show what the support is and why people are in favor of having one within each one of these potential sites. So if you haven't provided one yet, I know you've gotten an overwhelming number of letters already. So please reach out, and we're happy to talk more about that. But that's just building off of what Robert said. Go ahead.
Thank you for coming tonight and for hosting this public town hall to allow input and support. I'm Catherine Holcomb, a lifelong resident of Morgan City, president of St. Mary XL, a nonprofit working for community advancement in and around St. Mary Parish. It's my understanding that according to the scientists who have examined all of the zones under consideration to be Louisiana's National Estuarine Research Reserve, the Atchafalaya zone was the highest scoring zone as determined by a panel of experts. That's really exciting that the Atchafalaya zone scored the highest on the metric developed for this linear selection process. Science shows us that the Atchafalaya zone is a microcosm of Louisiana. It represents all of the habitats found within the state. We also feel like our people are also a microcosm of Louisiana. They represent all of the inhabitants and cultural mixes found here in Louisiana. I'd like to offer a few other measures to show how our Atchafalaya zone showcases all the attributes of Louisiana. Morgan City, Louisiana was named Jumbo Shrimp Capital almost 100 years ago. Our people have always supported their families from the waterways, abundant resources, which include so much more than just shrimp. We have that story to tell. Morgan City is also a legacy oil and gas community which has served the entire state of Louisiana, north, south, east, and west extremely well. That industry's booms and busts have impacted our people. The Mr. Charlie Rig in Morgan City, once a working platform, now the only authentic rig museum, overlooks the Atchafalaya River, and it symbolizes the changing landscape of the oil and gas industry as energy transitions are taking place. We still have that story to tell. Our Morgan City area was faced with environmental issues and a fight against and victory over the world's largest hazardous waste incinerator. Residents fought for over a decade to protect the Atchafalaya River, basin, and delta, and to keep our area safe for our people. And we have that story to tell. We've been challenged by flooding. A direct hit by Hurricane Andrew in 1992 was the impetus needed to shore up the area and begin a 20-year process to raise the levees to meet a 100-year flood event. These are only a few of our stories. Over the last 4 years, St. Mary XL has submitted numerous proposals and grant applications for resources to highlight our beautiful Atchafalaya, the largest river swamp in the United States. A few of them are a 2020 Conservation and Restoration Partnership Fund proposal for an Atchafalaya Interpretive Center at Morgan City, a NOAA-NERDA proposal, a Deepwater Horizon Restoration Project proposal, a 2021 Atchafalaya Basin Plan project for an interpretive center, a 2019 BP industry funding request, a 2020 Louisiana Trustee Implementation Group proposal, a 2020 National Fish and Wildlife Foundation Coastal Resilience Fund proposal, a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation appeal. In 2023, Louisiana Coastal Master Plan comments for continued support for an Atchafalaya Interpretive Center in Morgan City, and this is my favorite. Well, not my favorite, because they were all very important, very A 2020 Atchafalaya Basin Plan project for educational ferry boats for student use into the basin and delta. We've also written grants to fund the extensive Morgan City Walking and Bicycle Trail, which will connect all of our citizens to the waterways in our communities. The commitment of our citizens to connect the Atchafalaya National Heritage Area with trails from Amelia, Morgan City, Berwick, and now Bayou Vista will support the efforts of a Lanier in our area and will hopefully one day reach to the western end of the parish. Those bike trails, we want to connect. St. Mary XL wants to help tell our story, the story of a resilient Atchafalaya and a resilient people who have relied on each other for survival. We are 100% in support of our Atchafalaya zone being named the Louisiana National Estuarine Research Reserve. If Louisiana representativeness is the magic phrase for selection of the Atchafalaya zone as a Lanier, that magic is right here.
All right, you done? We got it?
Yep. Seal the deal.
Hi, I'm Carrie Stansberry. I'm the Executive Director of the KG Coast Visitors Aid Convention Bureau, representing St. Mary Parish. The coast, KG Coast, coast is very important to our identity, particularly since we are a eco-friendly, nature-based destination. I also sit as a commissioner to the Atchafalaya Heritage Area, which is a national program. I also sat many moons ago through the Atchafalaya Basin Program, various committees under the Department of Natural Resources. As a result of going to those events, we created an event called Eagle Expo. As part of that, we've done it for 17 years minus one, COVID. But we do bird tours on boats, we have educational speakers, which you guys are going to be here next Saturday, and an educational raptor program where we go to all the junior high schools in St. Mary Parish. We also host one to the public, and also we do one for homeschooled kids, parochial and private schools. So we see each year about 1,200 students. We believe that environmental stewardship is very important, particularly for me and for the Tourist Commission. I also met Dr. Twiley. I pronounce his name incorrectly all the time. I apologize about that. I always want to say Twiley. But I did meet him. He's been to our Welcome Center before, and his expertise on the Delta building is very fascinating. In the last several years, the Cajun Coast has worked with Luncan. They provided boats to the Eagle Expo, the Barataria Terrebonne National Estuary Program, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Department of Natural Resources, Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, the Audubon Society. I just found out tonight it's a new name.
Yeah, Audubon Delta.
Audubon Delta. And the list goes on. All of this is to say that we know how to partner. We know how to work with partnerships, and I think we do a very good job of that. The Cajun Coast would love to be a part of this amazing project. First, by you all selecting us as the site. And also, secondly, we would like to be home of the Lanier Education Program. We have a welcome center right on Highway 90 on 900 Dr. Martin Luther Boulevard. And it's access to the highway. We have a parking lot. And we think by partnering, we could be mutually beneficial to Lanier Project and to Cajun Coast. As you all know, that and understand and appreciate that St. Mary Parish is rich in diversity, and we believe that there is no greater place for Lanier.
One thing that was just said, I told you to encourage your friends to go to, we have the other town hall meeting in New Iberia on Thursday evening, the same time slot. But Justin and I won't be at the Eagle Expo and giving a presentation next Saturday. So if there's anybody that's missing this, encourage them to go and listen to us talk about it there as well. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Lud Henry. I'm Mayor Pro Tem of the town of Berwick, and pleasure for you to host this and St. Mary XL and all the hard work that they put forth. On behalf of Mayor Arthur and the rest of the town council in Berwick, we totally support this, and I'd like to read a letter that we will send to Governor Edwards. Dear Governor Edwards, the mayor and council for the town of Prairie is writing to add her support for the Atchafalaya zone to be named as the site for the Louisiana National Estuarine Research Reserve. We make this request for several reasons. Reason number one, the Atchafalaya Basin is perfectly situated to offer a variety of opportunities for learning, centrally located along the coast. It provides relatively short travel distance from major coastal zones, cities, and universities. Reason number two, the proposed Atchafalaya Reserve would provide vital research opportunities and access. It would be the only active delta estuarine system in the NEAR network, adding value to the significance of the research conducted at the site. Reason number three, the proposed Atchafalaya Reserve could use current monitoring efforts and restoration activities to increase physical and biological monitoring in fresh, floating, brackish, and salt marshes. Reason number four, Louisiana's Atchafalaya Basin is the largest wetlands in America with over 137,695 acres of swamp and marsh. All the more reason to showcase the importance of this major region. The Atchafalaya Basin is actually a small-scale version of Louisiana. Research activities associated with NEAR would be ideally situated in the Atchafalaya Estuarine Zone to attract scholars on a national and international stage, provide employment opportunities to the region, provide stronger connectivity to the rest of Louisiana, the Gulf Coast, and United States, and inject money into the local coastal economy. The presence of the NEAR would impact youth and young adults currently enrolled in Louisiana schools and contribute to an appreciation for Louisiana's natural resources. An Atchafalaya Zone NEAR would potentially shape decisions about where young Louisianans choose to live, work, learn, as well as raise families. Having a NEAR in the Atchafalaya Zone would support your announced focus on restoring and enhancing the Atchafalaya Basin. Therefore, I encourage the selection of the Atchafalaya Zone as a Louisiana NEAR site. On behalf of the
Somebody now.
And I'm here as a representative for the education sector for both higher education with South Louisiana Community College, Memorial Campus here in Morgan City, and with K-12 St. Mary Parish School Board, in addition to the St. Mary Parish Chamber of Commerce. I do want to go on record today and say some things that I've learned and discovered and the thoughts that I have about what I've seen in the videos, on the various sites, and from the presenters today. I want to take this opportunity to say that this opportunity has excitement, growth, and greatness written all over it. When I think about how the Atchafalaya National Estuarine Research Reserve can and shall increase the quality of life for the citizens, students, and visitors of St. Mary Parish, the connecting parishes, the local region, I get excited. I get excited about a possible economic increase in visitors and Louisiana travel. I get excited about the opportunity of new and hands-on learning experiences, as one of the presented videos mentioned, such as outdoor classrooms, living and live laboratories for students and teachers. I hear and I envision the opportunity for program additions and course offerings to the college and nearby universities. This opportunity can enhance the 2+2 transfer biology degree that SLCC offers in collaboration with Nicholls State University. The greatness that would come from the Atchafalaya National Estuarine Research Reserve in the Atchafalaya Zone speaks to the heart of our culture and our region. Who would not want to maximize every opportunity of research and access to studying about human development, sea level rises, erosion, and other things that will provide specific and scientific knowledge to increase opportunities in various sectors of society. Overall, not only would the Atchafalaya National Estuarine Research Reserve benefit St. Mary Parish, Southern Louisiana, and the nation, it would impact us all. We all know that the waterways here are perfect and priceless opportunities for such a reserve. Remember, we are centered here at the Gateway to the North.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Justin, I want to thank y'all for coming to Martin City to make your presentation. We really appreciate it. I'm Lieutenant Parola, one of the city councilmen here in Martin City. We had all 5 of our councilmen, one had to leave a little while ago, but that's the kind of support we have. And as Mr. Hanager said, he also has a bunch of his parish council people and ladies, see people, okay? And they're also going to support this project. And I won't speak for our council, but we've shown the interest. We're here. We want to see what's going on. We have everything here to offer that you talked about. And everything that these people have come up here and said, they're not pulling your leg. It's all right here. You know, and there's a lot going on. We have other things that we can throw at you, settlement, fluff, the whole 9 yards. And y'all might be able to come up with something to get rid of it for us. You know? But on behalf of the city council, and they're welcome to come here, we thank you for coming. We support the project, as does Berwick and everyone else. Our mayor had a prior engagement tonight. He's on the same page, I believe, wasn't you know, but we thank y'all and we certainly hope to be a part of it. Thank you.
Hi.
There you go.
Okay, I'm sorry, I feel weird talking to a room full of people with my back. My name's Leslie Smith, Leslie Landry Smith. I was born and raised here. I worked with Carrie Stansbury in tourism for a few years, and then I became an educator at Morgan City High School, my alma mater. I know you know everything. You're a researching fellow, right? You've done the presentation, you've done the proposal, you've done all the work. I'd like to speak on behalf of the youth. We have a couple of my students here in the back, in fact, and former students. Christina Williams is here. She would like to present a letter of support that she wrote as well. But I want to talk about how I see at Morgan City High School, we have a lot of cultural diversity, and somebody else mentioned that. We have that here. We have a lot of cultural diversity. But we don't have very much that links them all together, even though it's right under their noses. And like Dr. Tooley said in his presentation earlier, there's stories to tell. There's stories to tell to themselves, stories to tell to others, and stories to tell on a national level. And I feel like that giving them that common experience and having a near here, which by the way, we need a t-shirt. The near should be here to St. Mary Parish. It's on. And on the back, I'm excited. Yeah. All right, we need that. But they, in the past 15 years, I teach seniors. He wants to speak?
No. People are not leaving when it's not fun.
Okay. So, he wants a t-shirt, maybe that's it. So, what I see, I teach seniors and I know where they go to school, I know what they plan to major in. In the 15 years that I've been teaching, I've had one student say she wanted to major in marine biology. She ended up going to LSU, and the only reason why I believe is because her mother had prior experience in marine biology. We have Nichols State University that's about 27 miles from us here. We have a lot of students who commute there for financial reasons or of responsibilities at home. We have a lot of students who go there, and yet they never consider the biology department in that way. And we have this whole ecosystem right here, and this natural beauty here, right in front of them, and it's not on their radar because we aren't putting them out there. We have lots of boat docks. You're right, we do. But we don't have access to that, and the students don't have access to that unless they have a camp, unless they live on the water, unless their parents are fishers or hunters, which most of my students who pulled them are not.
Right.
They don't have access to the natural beauty. What do? They go sit on the seawall, and that's about it. That's where they go to access, and we need to provide that education for them. We need to let them know that there are options, that there are valid jobs that they could come back here for. They want to leave. They don't know what else to major in or how to make money. They feel like they have to leave our area. And we want them to stay. We want them to raise their families here. We want them to feel connected to the state and the place that raised them. We need this here. We really, really do. I'm passionate about it. For my students, for myself, I decided to come back here. My parents raised me here. I'm here with them. I will raise my children here. We need something here like this. All right, thanks.
Just building on what you're talking about here, I mean, you've all, I mean, thank you all for the passion that you have. It's really just uplifting. I mean, to be in a room where everybody is passionate about this process and what it can mean for here and why it should be here. But a few things that have come up with a few of you, just then we'll let you go on here. Usually I'm like trying to field questions and I don't have to, you guys just getting here. It's like the easiest job I've ever had in my life in terms of being in a group and moderating something. But, you know, a lot of what Dr. Twilley, you know, presented in here and also in Kristen's presentation, and I briefly highlighted on it, trying to get to what your feedback is the NEAR has a lot of different facets of what a NEAR is about, and giving opportunities and unique opportunities for people to get engaged with that natural environment is a very important part. And so trying to facilitate ways, I mean, if you go and you look at the different NEAR sites, one of the things that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are a large number of these NEAR sites, you know, obviously we're this gaping hole that we're trying to fill here in this national network of NEAR sites, but they have extensive number of education outreach programs and opportunities. And so one of the things that you can do with that is you don't have to try to figure out things. You can kind of see what things work and don't work, and then try them out here and see how they work and try to get that feedback. But to try to give people different ways to have opportunities to be exposed to the natural estuaries. And, you know, obviously this is a model for that. So just building on what you're saying, and sorry to slow you down in your testimony.
I'm like, my name is Grace Eisman, born and raised here. I'm 26 years old. I own a business here. I have 2 little toddlers that I'd like to raise here for the rest of their lives as well. But like you said, a lot of us have been born and raised here, and people assume that we've been born on the water. We're always out on the water, and that's true for me. But not a lot of my friends, and it's true for my kids now too. We have a camp down in the basin. I mean, you get to it 30 minutes by boat. So they are there when they can be, and they love it. They absolutely love it. But if I can include some sort of education in their lives with it, to where they can really appreciate it, I'm all for that. And honestly, until a couple of years ago, I didn't really appreciate it like I should have. And I think with starting with our high school age kids and even younger, I think if they were educated properly, they really could appreciate it. They want to come back here. They want to stay here. Because I went through the whole, I don't want to stay here. I don't want to come back here. I want to go to college, move away, and do all this. But now I'm like looking and searching and trying to come up with stuff to where I can stay here, and where me and my friends and their kids want to stay here. And I think this is a great opportunity for that.
She's coming back.
I'd like to introduce Christina Williams. Microphone working? Yeah.
I'm her student, so. She told me to read my letter to Governor Edwards, so that's why I'm here. Okay. Yeah.
Bonus points.
Totally. Okay. Dear Governor Edwards, I am writing this letter to you to formally voice my support for the Atchafalaya Zone to be your choice as a site for the Louisiana National Estuarine Research Reserve. It was not until 2 ladies with St. Mary XL, Kelly Lynn Boudreaux and Margaret Metsterio, walked into my English 4 class that I learned about the concept of an estuary. Like, for real, I did not know what that was. At all. Before that day, I had been unaware that something like a NEAR existed, and was even more shocked to find out that a linear could even come here to St. Mary Parish. Now, I'm sure this is not the first letter to inform, I'm so sorry. This is not the first letter to inform you of the benefits of a linear on the Atchafalaya Basin. But as a current Morgan City High senior, I do wish to offer you and members of the site selection committee a unique perspective to consider. Stuck in the shadow of its former glory as an offshore boomtown and home to the Shrimp and Petroleum Festival, some may say Morgan City has passed its prime. But, like many other residents of Morgan City, I know that this small town, nestled right on side of the Atchafalaya River, has something special. From its spirit to its abundance of culture and rich history, Morgan City is just waiting for that something that will rekindle that spark. That is where the Atchafalaya Zone comes in, and with it, a host of new possibilities for St. Mary Parish. Atchafalaya Delta has the ability to create jobs, which in hand will stimulate both the local and statewide industries and economy. As someone whose father is an avid fisher, it saddens me to know that he had few opportunities to fish as a child due to his own financial conditions. With Lanier, any child from any walk of life will be able to have access to what Louisiana naturally has to offer, including at-risk and disenfranchised youth just like my father. Our underfunded communities will now have access to public, hands-on education and will in turn be offered a jumpstart to a potential career. But besides this, anyone can find something in a linear to look forward to, whether that be biking and walking trails, a growth in eco-consciousness and greener companies, or just seeing a boost in morale in the community. While I'm currently planning to attend LSU next fall, I hope to come back to a city whose spirit has been revitalized by the effects of an Atchafalaya Estuarine zone. I trust that you and your fellow constituents will allow myself and my entire community to leave behind something for future generations that goes beyond ourselves. Thank you.
And don't feel bad about not knowing what an estuary was. I've actually had my class when I was teaching earlier today, my college class, and many people don't know what that is. You're not alone.
Well, I wish I had it all written down. Well, my name is Scott Green. I'm with the St. Mary Parish Chamber of Commerce. I'm a local business owner as well as a landowner in the Atchafalaya Basin. I own approximately 1/2 of 1% of the Atchafalaya Basin. So, that's not much.
It's a big basin.
So, I want to speak to you and the site selection committee. What I feel, Louisiana is considered a sportsman's paradise, and I say it all the time. I think it's on most license plates, and nothing screams sportsman's paradise like the Atchafalaya Basin. Growing up as a kid, some of my most fondest memories of catching crawfish with my grandmother, with dip nets, fishing with my dad, in high school and college fishing. But what I've noticed in the Atchafalaya Basin is a slow decline and the abundance of what, we call the sportsman's paradise or, the crawfish. A lot of it has to do with sediment. There's a bunch of reasons. And one of the things I really want to do is thank Governor John Bell Edwards and Chip Klein for their efforts in, restoring some of the things that are broken in the Atchafalaya Basin. I've been to several meetings. And my property is located just south of the intercoastal, north and south of the intercoastal, right in the transition area where it transitions from the cypress swamp to the marsh. So it's a real unique piece of property, and a few little stats where I believe, over the 50 years that I've been going to the Atchafalaya Basin, there's been a slow decline, a couple, 1 or 2% every year, 1 or 2%, it doesn't sound like much, but over a 50-year period, it's a big difference. And I've seen it because I remember how it was when I was a child. I believe it could be reversed. While Edwards and Chip Klein, they want to do a massive, let's see, spend a bunch of money and let's get it, let's make an impact. I do believe little things make a big difference. And a lot of this, the reason I know this is on my property in 2019, 15% or just over 15% of all the wild caught crawfish in Louisiana, actually in the Atchafalaya Basin, came off of that 0.5% property. In 2020, 42% of all the wild caught crawfish came off of that 0.5% of land. And this was done in less than a 4-month period of fishing. So the little things, I believe, make a big difference. I think the deer here in the Atchafalaya Basin could make a, while, when you think of the size of the Atchafalaya Basin, the amount of money that they have to spend, it may not seem like a bunch, or like it could have an impact, but I believe over time, the Atchafalaya Basin could be, as it was once before, if not greater. And, I'd like to thank, everybody for coming out, and I'd like to thank y'all, and we want in the Atchafalaya Basin, we want to get.
Thank you.
Good evening, my friends. Captain Caviar, and I'm a swamp tour captain here. Moved back here after 40 years of not living here in St. Mary Parish. And now I use the Atchafalaya Basin as my office to educate people from all over the world. So not only our students, which I think are underprivileged students, really should have an opportunity to go out there. Just like some of our teachers have said before, they have camps out there, but how many don't have camps out there? So our mayor of Patterson has put together a program we're talking about so that I can help do that. Because I'm also an educator, and I teach the history of our swamp and all of this, and how the trees and the cypress and Spanish moss and cypress wood industry and the hunting and the fishing, the sportsman's paradise that we do have. So my first question is, what's the economic impact of having a deer here?
That's a good question. And here we are, we've been doing this for 45 minutes.
And there's 48 other states that have done this, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are the last two?
Yeah, the coastal states all have near, and it's always difficult to quantify exactly what the economic impact is, but you do see, and Kristen in her presentation talked about increases in visitation, which then of course has there's the direct of people coming here and then staying, but then there's, they're spending money staying in the locale and things like that. So I know that those exist. I don't know if Kristen, you're still online, if you have
Research
she has
people.
raised her hand.
Do we have, brick and mortar?
All right. Here, let me bring the microphone over to see if that helps. I'm not sure exactly how much it does help, but okay. All right, go ahead, Kristen.
All right, I think the best way to probably explain it is through examples, and we've got a really great one over to the west of us, over in Texas at the Estuaries Reserve, in Port Aransas, Texas, if you're familiar. And one of the unique features about the Texas Reserve is that they have a conservation easement on an active cattle ranch, called Davidson Ranch. And since they agreed through the MIU process to be part of the reserve boundary, one of the things that has happened is they started their education tours and being tapped into some of the resources that the reserve provides, is that they were able to build a lot of bird blinds out at the ranch to encourage ecotourism, specifically around birding. There's fantastic birding in that area. And now, the last time we talked about it, the ranch actually makes more from the ecotourism bird photography than they do from the ranch activities. So it can definitely make a real impact.
Yeah, and just building on that, I think that, and I don't know how many other places that there's direct quantification of that, but the near network, people go to NEARS to find out about the different environments. I think just bringing in more people through that is going to have impacts in terms of, I don't know at a national level what kind of economic studies have been done, but it's sort of, the whole mantra of, if you build it, they will come. attention drawn to it on that national scale will also help us.
So what's the logistics of getting them to that blind where they can see those birds? There are no roads that go down to Point of Bear. There are no roads that go up there 15 or 20 miles north of Morgan City where I take people to mom.
Right.
So the logistics of getting them there, like is there a brick and mortar? So does near say, okay, here's our research center, and from here we have these boats that'll take you there, these captains, and we have these educators. I mean, what does it look like?
Well, those are really good questions. I mean, NERS do have facilities associated with them. They do have boats that are there. They also work in partnerships to be able to get people to different places. And there will be a main site of operation that's still to be determined, and that's in that later phase of the process. But one of the things when you have something that is so geographically spread out, as you're talking about, and some of the places have limited access, is trying to make sure that you have part of your partners and locations you have different points. So you can go down to Superman Point and have a launch from there, and be able to go to Burns Point if you want to get into Wax Lake Delta, to be able to have access points, to be able to bring people out on the water. And working through partnerships with TNC and Audubon for their lands and property to be able to have access. These are all things that have to be worked out, but there are models that exist, and I don't know, Kristen, you want to talk more about that from the national?
Well, I've seen the other people in the running here, so I know Barrett's Area Pass down there, Grand Isle. A lot of these people here know that. New Orleans East, another one in the running here. We've all seen what happens in New Orleans East. Nobody has what the Atchafalaya Basin has. Nowhere else on earth. People fly millions of miles, well, hundreds of thousands, 10,000 to 4 miles, just as time to see the Atchafalaya Basin. So God bless America, God bless the Atchafalaya.
All right, thank you.
Kristen, in the chat, and we can actually send all these articles to you guys that have signed up with your emails today. There is a link to economic impact of those feeder sites in Florida.
Yeah, so it's confused for us. So yeah, we can provide that information. So please make sure if you haven't done so already, to please make sure you sign in, and we can provide information to you that way. And for those online, obviously, it's posted in the chat so you can follow that.
Hi, my name is Eric Stone, I'm from the local area. I have quite a few questions for you. I understand what y'all have going on, but what information would this provide the commercial fishermen? How would this benefit us as a community? Because it's not just me, there's thousands of people that make a living, pay their bills with us. What kind of information are y'all willing to provide with that? Are y'all willing to work with the commercial fishermen alone? I understand the education part of it. But you have these guys like me, you're out there 12, 13, 14 hours a day. How can I help the education, and how would this help me and benefit me in the long term for my kids and their kids, and how would that go on and so forth?
Very, very good question. And I think there's a lot of different ways to see some of the benefits. I mean, in terms of helping out with, your profession, in terms of the fisheries, I mean, there is a, Kristen's presentation alluded to this. There is a sort of a monitoring program that is part of it to compare what conditions are, and it's sort of set up nationally with the local modifications for exactly what the focus is and where the locations are. So there very well may be real-time data that's available to you to help out with trying to make decisions about where you might want to be going to do some of these activities. In terms of the connection that is with your children being part of some of the activities, I think that's sort of covered a little bit. How you can all give, I think this is where we're trying to figure out how we design, where we end up. If you try to take all of those state lands and you try to make a NER out of that would just be completely impossible to be able to have that all be part of a NER, right? Because especially on the budget that's available to do that. because you need to oversee it and make sure that everything is going well and monitor it. But trying to figure out where are the strategic locations that we want to be having as the core areas. Near sites have these things called the core area and they have buffer areas. So, you know, the core sites, you know, where are those locations going to be? Are those ones that have the most benefit to the overall site, to the local community? Trying to figure out where things are, what activities we're going to do, how we shape some of our education programs, our outreach programs, the training that's there. You know, are there ways that we can provide information that may help benefit, you know, local fishermen in terms of understanding where might be the strategic places to be focusing their efforts. So I think there's a lot of give and take that's involved in this, and trying to understand what it is that, if this was selected as the site, what kind of, where.
When it's selected.
Part of my job is to be very political about how this goes. Obviously, I'm the lead of this proposal team. I have my preferences for where I think this should be located. But point well taken. So Kristen wants to add to what I am saying here. No, please do.
Well, the point that I think is really important to emphasize, so in response to the previous question, what will the reserve do or what information it provide to you? I mean, I think that the quick answer is that everything that they do should be useful to you in some way, shape, or form, because the reserve structure is created such that the only thing that they're working on, the research interests that they're following, the education programs that they're developing, are always done at the input of the community first and what the community's needs are. And so I think one great example is the water quality monitoring program that they run. That the factors that they measure and monitor and that they look out for, they are directly working with the fishing communities to understand what the most important parameters are to monitor, so that everyone has a good understanding of the resource and the health. So that's just one very small example of kind of how that research is tailored and used, but truly at the end of the day, all of this should be for you.
Yeah, and building on that, not just which parameters should be measured, but where are the key areas that we need to be trying to focus, where some of that monitoring is, because you are ultimately having limited amount of resources that you can devote to carrying out all the different programs associated in there. And this is where the feedback from all of you is so important in that process. Thank you, Kristen. Go ahead.
I also don't like to stand with my back to people. You never know who's out there. My name is Bryce Merrill. I'm associated with the Mr. Charlie, the rig that is sitting in the river, which is an ideal place to start a facility for Lanier. But what I really wanted to say was just in support. The people in this area have been associated with water for thousands of years. I've traveled all over the world in the oil field, and everywhere you go, people know this small community. They know Morgan City, they know it for the oil field, they know it for shrimping, and they know it for lumbering. So having the facilities that we have here, the people that we have here, this is an ideal location for the LA Lanier to carry on our legacy of association with the water. Thank you.
Yeah, please do. Since we are checking the boxes and everything, we also have a Boy Scout camp here, right up the road. That's right. They don't want to back. Oh, I'm so fun.
He just lit it. It's a little match. You make it, you build that fire.
That's right. I know Bryce Merrill, so I'm gonna bring it back to him. All I'm gonna say is that Monica approached me earlier this week about talking about the Boy Scouts of America. Most of the people in this room who know me realize that I am the oldest Boy Scout in Morgan City and Planis, and also served on the executive committee for the Boy Scouts of America for the Evangel Area Council. And
I just want to go on record that the Boy Scouts of America, as Lou Tamperello would say, as everyone knows here, has a facility here in Morgan City called the Swamp Base. And we have canoes out there that we service the Boy Scout community. We also associated with the Swamp Base program in Lafayette, which brings thousands of children and enthusiasts to the area each year in the canoe in the basin. So all I just wanted to say is that Boy Scouts of America does support the effort. And congratulations on everyone showing up tonight, and I hope things work out well for us.
How you doing? I'm AJ Wanders, I'm a local lifelong resident of Morgan City. And the question I have tonight is, as far as a local economy impact, I wonder if, you come show up over here and start building facilities. Will our local lumber yards, our local, carpenters, plumbers, and electricians, will they have an opportunity to bid on that construction when you have two-way ground?
Yeah, I mean, these are gonna be state facilities, and, that process, is
There's
not.
other facilities being built around town I've seen, but I've never seen the lumber yard in part of the lumber trucks never showed up, stuff coming back through.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff.
No, and I get it, and that, I don't understand that part of the process, I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. I mean, it makes perfect sense that it would be local to do things local.
Yeah.
I mean, from an environmental standpoint, that makes more sense, less transportation. Yeah. No, thank you, point very well taken.
I had no idea I was gonna stand up here.
Yeah, you did.
I want to share something, and maybe you can appreciate this, and maybe you can understand why we are so adamant about having you all to come. I just happen to be a former educator, and I just happen to befriend a lot of my students. So I'm probably the only black guy in South Louisiana that can water ski. I also had the opportunity to go to a lot of camps because my students' parents are on camp. But I want to get off of that and come to this point. I happened to go to Athens, Greece, my wife and I. We met a lady by the name of Hope Bates. Hope Bates and her husband Jerry lived in Abbott, Maine. Abbott, Maine is about the size of this room. Okay. Jerry and Hope own a house in Florida, so they go to Florida during the cold weather. They said that we were going to stop in Morgan City on our way to Florida. Now, I've been living here for years, and I can tell you how, 77 years. I know what the area looked like. Hope and Jerry Bates have never seen moss in the trees before. We took them out to Lake End Park. You know that those people had question after question about the trees, about everything. So this is a good area. And we appreciate you all coming. If Hope and Jerry could stop in Morgan City on the way to Florida, and then stop in Morgan City on the way back to Abbott, we deserve this.
over some things y'all can tell him. With, so when I finish teaching him, he can finish later.
Well, that's really, that's really important question, and it's a challenging question. I think there are several ways that a reserve can help in that capacity. Most of them have to do with trying to make sure that, one, for the monitoring network that is there, that we are keeping track of things. It's hard to deal with problems, to fix problems once they're already really, really bad. It's easier if you can be able to see that things are trending the wrong way and try reversing before you get there.
Right.
And then there's the education programs in terms of trying to educate people on what is happening, why we're seeing these situations, and try to understand how things might be able to change and move forward. Obviously the NEAR network is providing an infrastructure. It's not like it's got, direct funding to basically change the way that the water is being delivered in itself. It is basically an Estuarine Research Reserve. It is trying to maintain what's there, be able to study it, be able to teach people about it, to be able to present opportunities. But in conjunction with the state and the priorities that exist within the Atchafalaya Basin and the task force that exists in here, I think there's the cooperation there to be able to provide information that may be able to then end up with decisions that are made. I don't know if Robert or Kristen, you wanted to add anything to that? It's really hard.
Well, that sounds good. Just where the problem is known, that's the start. But right now, nobody knows, and we don't want to see the dead fish.
Yeah, no, I hear you completely, and I think that's what part of what you said is that you're the only ones that know.
Right.
So trying to figure out ways that we can make people aware of what the situation is and educate folks about it are part of how you can end up making changes, even if the NEAR infrastructure itself is not set up to solve problems.
Correct.
It is, but it's being able to try to make people aware of it and bring people to those environments and try to figure out where it is are important places for the monitoring to take place that are part of that process. Is that fair, Kristen or Robert? Anything to add? Can't see them without taking over the entire screen. So. It's okay.
Monitoring, understanding how things are changing before they get to the point where it's really hard to fix. I think that's an excellent point.
I think one thing to add on to that is that the proposal for this project is not just the federal government, it's not just NOAA with the NEAR project, but it's also pulling together all the partners. They're doing a lot of the scientific research, not only at CPRA, but at the major universities. And it's pulling all of that information into one general place where we have one informed standpoint to be able to make some of those potential future policy decisions. So this is just kind of the beginning of allowing all of these different efforts that are happening in various parts of state government and various local governments, and putting all that information in one place where it can be analyzed kind of scientifically in an appropriate way.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kim Sandberg. I'm the city court judge in Morgan City. I've been a judge here for 25 years. I've been asked to come here tonight to make sure you guys do the right thing. I'm a lifelong resident of Morgan City. I actually thought the whole legislation was here. I'm a lifelong resident of Morgan City. I've been blessed with the opportunity of experiencing the basin. My children have experienced the basin. We've been very blessed to have all of the resources, the people, everything that you guys want. We want you here. We want you here passionately. people that, for the experiences that we in the Morgan City area, St. Mary Parish area, and we'd love to do it. When I was coming here tonight, this afternoon, I seen an eagle fly. You know, and I mean, it just reminds me of all the things that this community has to offer. So, we want you here, please come here, and we welcome you here. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to touch on one thing that you mentioned there in terms of about, thinking the whole site selection committee was going to be here. There, at the peak, I don't know exactly what it was, when I looked down, there was at least 75 people that were online, in addition to the 130 or so people that were here. There are 9 of these meetings that are taking place within 2 weeks across the 3 basins. So people are online that are here from the selection committees. They are hearing your comments. All of these are being recorded, so that way they can also watch them later. So people are very engaged. It's just difficult to get everybody to go to all the different locations that many times. Pretty much every day over the last 2 weeks, there are meetings taking place. So, but this is incredibly impressive showing from all of you. To see the passion and the number of you that have come out. And like I said, you've got other opportunities to encourage your friends. Please do so. We're going to be up the road in New Iberia on Thursday evening, and then we're going to show up at the Eagle Expo next Saturday, the 19th. Calendar. Are there anybody else that wanted to say anything? I know I want to be cognizant of people's time. We are just a little bit past 8 o'clock now, but I'm willing to listen. And as long as you guys want to stay.
The paperwork that you gave us to fill out,
Yes.
is there a mailing address to mail it to, or do we fill it out?
There's a basket in the back.
There's a basket in the
Basket in the back for the sign.
Is there pencils?
Oh, here's a pen.
But so that brings up an important point. There is a survey.
Yeah.
Part of the overall NEAR process. So please fill that out. I believe there's an address to mail it to, and if not, please reach out and we'll figure out, we'll tell you where to send it. Yeah, and then the other place that the survey is located is actually on the Seagrant site for the NEAR Delaware fund. Go ahead.
I just have a quick question. Kelly Boudreaux, I'm the St. Mary Excel business owner and community member mom. So obviously we all want it here. What else can we do as a community, as business owners, as citizens? What can we do to show that support and keep the momentum going?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think we're well on our way to overwhelming the site selection committee with the support through letters are a fantastic way to do this. And then get the word out. Talk to your friends and neighbors, your fellow business owners. Get them to, if they have questions, come to the other town halls, go to the website if they can't make one of them, to go check it out. Pass along the flyer. I'm happy to provide more. I already provided St. Mary Excel with the PDF of the two-pager about the Atchafalaya. We'll get the word out the best we can. If you have questions, encourage them to reach out to me. Reach out to Delta Near, the email address for Delta Near. Just continue to show the tremendous support that you guys have demonstrated tonight. I mean, it's incredible to see this out. Yes.
Are y'all going to come back here again?
We're happy to talk more. In terms of the organized town halls, the idea is that they all have the 3. We did the one virtual one last week during the middle of the day. We got one here, and then we have one on Thursday. This process, as Dr. Cooley talked about, ultimately, the proposals that are going in, we sent in a draft proposal in mid-March, and we have a final proposal in April. They're going to make a recommendation to the governor by May. and input throughout that process. I'm happy to have meetings with groups or individuals to learn, to learn more about what their interests are. If it means that we need to schedule another meeting, I'm happy to do that. And then the use of the phrasing that was over there, when this site would be selected, there will be a long process there that's going to take over a year in terms of ultimately ending up figuring out exactly what locations are going to be part of the process. We're willing to talk as much as needed, and to meet with groups or to come back and we need to have another meeting. So please just let us know what it is you need and let you know how you can help. And again, there's my email address.
Yeah, that is great.
Any other comments?
What's that, man? All right, man. I didn't know you were. I know you did. I know you did. How you doing, man? Good, man. All is well. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.